Charlottesville, Pittsburgh, El Paso, there's a pattern of white nationalism in America.
Last year, FBI Director Chris Wray called it a persistent and pervasive threat, and we've seen this issue come up again following the death of George Floyd.
And while we continue to see public displays of hatred like these, white nationalism is also creeping up in other, more insidious ways on college campuses around the country.
It's not neo-Nazi stormtroopers anymore. It's people who look like everyday acquaintances, who look like our neighbors.
We had flyers posted in one of our buildings from a known white nationalist group, and we've had small instances of tagging. We've had swastikas found on some of our spaces on campus.
White supremacist activity on campus reached a record high last year, at least since the Anti-Defamation League began tracking the data back in 2016. And educators fear that there's an even greater risk for children now that so much learning is being done remotely.
White supremacists, particularly alt-right groups, have been targeting U.S. college campuses since January 2016, but that effort really failed to gain traction until the fall of that year. And after the fall of that year, ever since, we've seen a noticeable number of incidents that were reported and recorded, and it has only continued to climb. The group called Patriot Front is probably responsible for the most at this point.
In 2019, there were roughly 630 incidences of white supremacy propaganda distribution on college and university campuses in the United States, nearly double that of 2018.
And Oakton Community College saw this firsthand. The campus, about an hour north of Chicago, woke up to flyers with the insignia of white nationalist groups.
It was very troubling.
Joyanne Smith is the president of Oakton Community College.
Nobody wants that in their community, especially when we have students on this campus who might have specifically felt targeted by whatever the flyers might have said, by the swastikas, that it's our responsibility to say, you belong here. And as the leader of the college, I certainly feel like I have a responsibility to publicly denounce those instances when they happen.
And unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident. Educators across the United States are figuring out how to combat white nationalism in the classroom.
You know there have been a number of mass shootings committed by white nationalist gunmen, yes? The frequency with which these incidents are happening is stunning.
Everything changed after August of 2017, after Charlottesville. We started seeing and hearing more in our school communities almost immediately. And they were marching through streets in daylight and at night with torches. So schools suddenly found ourselves in a position where we needed to support our students as they were processing some really complicated, scary information.
Nora Flanagan is a teacher in the Chicago Public School District. We spoke to her before the pandemic. By day, she teaches high school English, but at night, she's partnered with the Western State Center, a nonprofit based in Oregon, helping teachers fight extremism in the classroom.
Somebody really needs to make a resource. This isn't a situation you ever think is going to happen at your school, and then it does, and people feel really caught off guard because teachers, when we spot it, we don't know who to tell, we don't know what kinds of responses to encourage, we don't know how to support the students who've witnessed it or been targeted or who are being recruited.
With Nora's help, Western State Center created a white nationalism toolkit. It aims to give educators ways to identify potential dangerous behaviors, but also ways to talk about it.
One of the sections we focused a lot on are those more subtle indicators.
Here's one that I want everyone to talk more about. It uses misogyny and homophobia as a recruitment pipeline. So a kid might not be a racist, a kid might not have explicitly hostile beliefs about other ethnic groups, but if you can win them over with mean memes about girls, or junior high level homophobic jokes, you got an in.
What type of response have you gotten from this toolkit?
We have sent out thousands of copies. They are in all 50 states. Last I checked, over a dozen other countries. It's being translated into other languages. The response has been massive, which is both encouraging that people want to have these conversations and heartbreaking that we need to.
And those conversations are not always easy. Educators are facing an age-old question.
How do you juggle protecting your students and the freedom of speech?
I will be honest and tell you that is the trickiest balance for many institutions of higher education For me, it comes down to our institutional values and what we're here to do. It is our responsibility to create a safe learning environment for every student that comes to Oakton. And so I will always err on the side of ensuring safety, denouncing hate. It's risky and there could be potential backlash, but I want to be on the right side of justice.
Oakton's head of human resources, who helps facilitate these conversations firsthand, agrees.
We are living in challenging times, and everyone that comes into the college is bringing their own experiences. And so the issues that are happening in the world are being reflected as what could happen in the institution. And so we just want to make sure that we are staying in front of those conversations, being part of the conversation, and equipping our institutional leaders with ways in which they can support our students.
Flyering is an example of the increased boldness of the last few years, but also the rebranding of white nationalism. After the 90s, these hate groups realized that shaved heads and combat boots and swastikas weren't winning over a lot of people. Enough to keep existing, but not a lot. When you stop calling it the American Nazi Party and you come up with a new group called the American Identity Movement, that's a major hate group that's recruiting on campuses. It used to be called Identity Europa. But they rebranded even further to make it just sound like a patriotic group. And their flyers don't have slurs on them, and they don't call for violence, they call for patriotism. It's much more subtle. The marchers in Charlottesville were wearing polo shirts and khakis.
Why are you here? We're here to support white interests.
Their recruitment efforts are aimed at kids as young as 10 or 11. So if that's where the recruitment efforts are happening, that's where our attention needs to be, and we need to be vigilant.
With the coronavirus pandemic forcing education for young students to be increasingly remote, Nora fears that online learning can create a new access point for hate groups. She also says, however, that the Western State Center continues to grow to meet the need.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.